Alright, so for our live example, I'm going to ask our audience to please open up the Alpaca account and portfolio notebook. And within this, we're going to run down through here, explain what's going on, reference back to the documentation here in Alpaca, and even take a look at our account just to make sure and verify that we're getting the right information. So with that, let's go ahead and trace through a notebook. So first, we're going to import our Alpaca Trade API as Trade API. So importing our Alpaca Trade API module so that we have the capability to interact with Alpaca. We're going to import pandas, and this is very simply, again, to access our credentials notebook. So we want to be able to access credentials where we have stored our Alpaca API and our Alpaca secret, which can be obtained from your Alpaca view. So where we viewed this earlier, this dashboard should look familiar. If you want to grab those keys, you're going to click this view button, generate, and it will give you your API and your secret key. So just beware. I'm not going to show mine on here just because I don't want people having access to my account, but this is where you'll grab that information and update that credentials file if you haven't already done that. And again, this is a free account. It's something that I like to test with on the paper side, so feel free to jump over and do that. Once done, we call our API. We assign a variable API by calling our trade API and passing it our credentials for our API and our secret. We tell it we want to access the paper side of Alpaca and we want to use their API version 2. So this is should be again a familiar call with how we were accessing securities information in our previous sections. So down below, this is where we're going to start getting to the meat of what we're going to learn in this section, and that is where we're going to get our account info and also our portfolio history. So starting with account info, we have created a function to grab our account. So understanding what values we can get out of the account. Now unfortunately today during this I'm not going to be able to show you all of the pieces of information you'll get back from the account. I'm going to take you in and show you what you can get, but if I were to display that account, you would be able to see my account number and information that you shouldn't have. So we're going to pick a couple of these values and then I'll go and show you what else you can get. But we'll look at the status, we'll look at the buying power, and then we'll jump over to Alpaca. So before we jump into portfolio history, let's actually get into the detail on what we're doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this function, or run this block. And what this is going to do, again, we're not running either of our functions until we get down here. I want to create two variables, status and buying power, by calling our function getAccountInfo. So this is going to run getAccountInfo, and it's going to return status and buying power by going into Alpaca, and we've already logged into our API, and we're going to, so with our login, we're going to go use our API.getAccount function to get our account. So now that we've got account assigned to API.getAccount, we're going to get our status value, and we're going to get our buying power, and we're going to assign that to these two values, and we're going to return them where they will be assigned. And again, in this order, status and buying power will be assigned to the first and second variables that we've chosen down here. So status, we can go ahead and check that, what was assigned to it. My account is active. Buying power is $29,387.88. And just to jump over and show you that, in this Alpaca example here, you can see they have very good documentation on how to code. So this is a how to code sample where you can come in and you can get your more information on Python if you want to write it in C# or a different type of language. They also have examples here for that. But there's also a helpful section of this. I'm going to click that V2 account here, which will actually take you and show you each of those things you have available to you. So whereas I picked our buying power and then I picked our account status, you can look at day trading buying power. So if you're sitting over that $25,000 threshold and you want the ability to day trade, you can look at that. You can look at how much you have in your portfolio. So what is my portfolio? Am I about to get flagged as a pattern day trader? Maybe if I'm underneath of that $25,000 threshold and might get my account locked. Check the last equity, check your account ID, You can check all of these values via that account information. So when I pull over the account and I run this, my account will actually now, if I were to show you what this was, again I can't because I don't want to show you all of my information in there, but if I showed you account, I would have a return for each of these values. And very simply, instead of showing you each, I'm just picking out a couple. So I'm getting account.status. So I'm going to the account.status and I'm returning this value by assigning it to status, and same with buying power. So these, I'm grabbing those two and I'm assigning them here. And again, we'll utilize some more of these later down the road, but this is very simply how I interact on Alpaca with my account. If I want to get these certain pieces of information, generally from my account, I'm getting my equity and I'm getting my buying power. I'm figuring out how much my portfolio is worth day over day, and I'm also getting my buying power so that I know, hey, if I want to use 1% of my available buying power for trading with a stock, I can quickly calculate what that is by going to my buying power and looking at that. And just to show you how that correlates, this value here of 29,387 does match the buying power that I have here, and this is going to fluctuate a little bit depending on how this equity value moves with my prices of my securities, my sample securities I have in here. But if we were to rerun this quickly, you can see that this is moving along with this value in here. So again, very quick, very handy way to be able to obtain that account information. Now let's go ahead and move to the portfolio history, where we're going to be able to see what's actually inside of our portfolio and how it's performed. So inside of our portfolio, you're going to, or inside of our get portfolio history call rather, we have created a function to be able to call that API and grab a different set of information. So much like our account, you actually have the ability to call your portfolio history and grab each of these values. So you're going to be able to get your equity, your profit loss percentage, and be able to track those over time. And if you pass it these different periods, in our example, we're not going to pass it anything. We just want the defaults, which is okay as well. So it'll tell you what the defaults is. So it defaults to 1 month, it defaults to 1 day here for the time frame, and it for date end, it's not really necessary considering you've passed it the 1 minute and the 1 day. But regardless, to show you what this looks like, we'll run it here in a second and give you those values. You can come in here and you can actually pass it these different items to affect that call and the data that you're going to return. So again, each of these are values you can get out of this specific call to grab our portfolio. So now that we've already run this, so I already executed this, so I don't need to execute it again. But if I want to check on any of these values, we can do that, because when we ran this originally and when we did it a second time here to check our buying power again, we accessed our get portfolio definition, or our function here, and we assigned portfolio history, equity, profit loss, and profit loss percentage to the outputs being returned here from our function. So we come in, we're grabbing our portfolio history, so we're getting all information from our portfolio utilizing this API. So API here, where we assigned it, dot get portfolio history. We're taking the equity portion in this example and just getting the last value of our equity. So this is an index that's telling it I want the latest value that has been assigned to equity, and I'll show you what these look like, don't worry. Same with profit loss, grabbing the profit loss and grabbing the last value, profit loss percentage, and grabbing that. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of these. So portfolio history is going to give me everything. It's going to tell me what the base value is shown here, base value, and I'm going to get a list of each of these over the default parameters here. So I've got the last 15, I think it was, equity values, the last 15 profit loss values, profit loss percentage, and then timestamp. And what we've done And here, instead of having to search through each of these to get the value we want, we go ahead and we grab our equity value and we grab our latest equity value. So this is going to give me equity should be equal to this 15,029.18. So let's go ahead and check that. So on our next value, go ahead and hit equity, and you can see equity, we're pulling this value, so we assigned equity here to the output here, which is equal to this. It is our last value from our portfolio history in the equity return. So equity, latest value of 150.29.18 is in fact assigned to our equity position. So go ahead and clear our outputs here, and let's check on the rest of these. So profit loss, 423. Profit loss percentage, 0.0223% or 0.28%. I'm sorry. So we can see that those will correlate. So 4.23 to our profit loss, which is I believe a dollar value, and our profit loss percentage here of 0.02%. So again, very powerful, very quick ways to interact with the APIs. So some things I would recommend you doing before going to the next section is to, again, trace through this. You're not going to break anything. You're playing with a paper account. Trace through this. Play with getting these values. Look at what the account gives you. So instead of me, where I can't show you exactly what account does, maybe return account as the as a variable here, and type it in. Once you run this, put account in here to assign it, and then once you run this function again, take a look at account and see what account gives you. Check all the values. Check being able to say I want the latest value of my account status, my buying power, my account ID. Make sure you understand that, so that if you want to interact with Robinhood or you want to interact with TD Ameritrade, that you're familiar with the call, you're familiar with how to interact, you're familiar with the login, even the login section, right? So here I have to assign API as my login credentials so that they understand when I call the API, when I say I want to go to API, that I am who I say I am. I'm referring to the paper account, and I'm accessing the get account function of my API, or I'm accessing the get portfolio history. So take your time on this section, understand how to log in. If you want to do this with TD or Robinhood, it'd be good to practice logging in, practice going to their API, getting your account info, and then assigning that to variables so that you're grabbing those values. All right. If you have any questions on this, again, feel free to reach out to the email in the course section. I'm very happy to help with this, especially if you're struggling with other brokerages. Hope you enjoyed this portion. Now let's go ahead and jump into interacting and trading with our paper account.